As Roman emperor, Marcus Aurelius was the most powerful man in the world. Yet he opens his meditations not with proclamations of power, but with expressions of gratitude. In this episode, I'll share who he thanks, why he thanks them, and what I've learned about humility, right action, and appreciating others more fully today. Let's get into it. From my grandfather Varus, I learned good morals in the government of my temper. From the reputation and remembrance of my father, modesty and a manly character. From my mother, piety and beneficence and abstinence, not only from evil deeds, but even from evil thoughts. And further, simplicity in my way of living, far removed from the habits of the rich. It's striking that this is how Marcus Aurelius begins meditations. My takeaway is that if someone at the peak of worldly power still sees himself as a student shaped by others, then how much more should I? In this episode, I want to highlight some of these specific traits that Marcus thanks his friends and teachers for that I found especially thought-provoking. From his friend Rusticus, he learned to abstain from rhetoric and poetry and fine writing, and not to walk about in the house in my outdoor dress, nor to do other things of the kind, and to write my letters with simplicity. In other words, Marcus learned to avoid flashy and elaborate language just for show. My takeaway is to keep my communication straightforward and simple, aiming to lead others to truth, not trying to display my intelligence or vocabulary. From his friend Apollonius, he learned to see clearly in a living example that the same man can be both resolute and yielding. I thought this was interesting because to be resolute and to be yielding are thought to be opposites. But Marcus points out that they can coexist. A man can hold firm in his convictions without compromise, yet still be understanding and yield when the circumstances call for it or when a truer path is shown. He also learned how to receive from friends what are esteemed favors without being either humbled by them or letting them pass unnoticed. In other words, I should accept favors without feeling inferior or diminished while still showing genuine gratitude so they know it's appreciated. From a grammarian, he learned not in a reproachful way to chide those who uttered any strange-sounding expression, but dexterously to introduce the very expression which ought to have been used. For example, if a friend says, "I seen it yesterday," instead of correcting their grammatical error outright, I can dexterously introduce the correct form of grammar into the conversation, for example by replying, "Yes, I saw it too." This keeps the focus on the idea and not on the mistake. From Alexander, he learned not frequently nor without necessity to say to anyone or to write in a letter that I have no leisure, nor continually to excuse the neglect of duties required by our relation to those with whom we live by alleging urgent occupations. In other words, I shouldn't be so busy that I neglect those that are closest to me, since those relationships are what matter most at the end of the day. His father he respected for being a man who looked to what ought to be done, not to the reputation which is got by a man's acts. I should do what ought to be done first, and worry about my reputation second. Lastly, he respected his father for being a man who was able to both abstain from and to enjoy those things which many are too weak to abstain from and cannot enjoy without excess. In the case of alcohol, for example, or any other pleasures, to be able to enjoy it in moderation without going to excess is a mark of self-mastery. Ultimately, Marcus later writes that when thou wishest to delight thyself, think of the virtues of those who live with thee. For instance, the activity of one and the modesty of another, and the liberality of a third, and some other good quality of a fourth. For nothing delights so much as the examples of the virtues when they are exhibited in the morals of those who live with us. My takeaway is that, like Marcus, I have much to be grateful for. And this opening chapter is a reminder that no matter how far I go in life, reflecting on the gratitude I owe to others keeps me grounded and humble, and the virtues he thanks others for are the very ones I should strive to live out myself. Thanks so much for watching. The goal of this channel is to share what I've learned from philosophy about how to live better today, and through sharing, my hope is that you too can pick up tidbits of knowledge that can lead to a happier life. If that's something you're interested in, then subscribe to follow along, and I hope to see you in the next episode.